Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to show you how to draw a green, shiny, little teeny-weeny Christmas ball. And the whole idea started with the thought that I would show you how to color something from Gorgeous Garland, one of my coloring books. And then I thought it would be really fun to show you from the very beginning how to draw the whole thing, because a lot of people like to add details and objects to coloring book pictures. So what I did here was just make a perfect circle, and it's actually bigger than the ornament, but that's okay. I used the bottom of a glass, and I cut a lot out of it because it takes me a bit in the beginning to get the dimensions right. Now I'll tell you all the colors at the bottom because I go back and forth so much during this that it'll be a bit complicated. Now, I went back and forth a whole lot because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I took a picture of the ball, and then all of a sudden I noticed it's not just shiny, and there's not just those two little perfect reflections like everybody draws on the perimeter to make something shiny look shiny. There's a whole lot more to it. So this was my attempt at showing you how to interpret it. So I can't even tell you how many greens. I used Polychromos greens and I used Schpirerr Farben greens. Now what I'm doing here is just trying to outline all the different kinds of green that I saw on the ball. It's amazing what you don't realize is in a reflection. And I didn't know how to differentiate it. So what I did at first was choose the color that was my interpretation of that green. So you see me using gray here and sky blue and a little bit of yellow because the greens in that part of the picture had a bit or a hint of those colors in them. I was also trying to lay out what I was seeing. And at first I wasn't quite sure. And then somewhere along the line, it hit me like the things I was drawing were the pictures that were hanging up behind me, or the reflection of the windows. It was actually very cool. About 15 minutes into drawing this picture, I realized that it's very complicated. And after 15 minutes, I was kind of like, should I finish this? It's so much. It's way too much detail. And then I decided I was going to do it because maybe somebody out there might want to see this. I'm also going to do a much more simplified version. So hit the subscribe button below, and either tomorrow or the next day I'll be putting out, I usually put only 2 videos out a week. I'm going to put out an extra one this week just because I really do think there needs to be a simplified version of this. So hit subscribe below and you won't miss out on that one. Now back to the picture. A little while ago, as I was drawing, I realized the lamp was in the picture, like I was saying. The walls were in the picture, and I was not dumbfounded, but I was really intrigued by this whole thing, and I was also a little overwhelmed because this little 1-inch ball had the data of an entire portrait in a 1-inch space. So I was going to be trying to recreate this in this picture that I initially thought was going to take me about 15 or 20 minutes. I was wrong. So I'm still at the point in the picture where I'm trying to get a feel for where everything was going to fit in this little tiny ball. And I also realized that black and the very dark colors are the scariest part. They're a big commitment. The other parts you can kind of not worry about as much because you're just giving hints or indications. And it's not so bad because they're all green. The parts that I felt like I had to worry about were the parts that were going to stay pure white and the parts that were going to be jet black. Ooh, I almost forgot. When you're done watching this video, look underneath in the information area because there is a URL for the Blick giveaway for the 12 days of Christmas. They're giving away over $33,000 worth of free art supplies. So definitely go check that out and definitely head over to Blick and you can enter once a day, I think for the next 9 days. In this area, I'm using a light turquoise blue because that little windowy area is exactly that. It's a reflection of the window and the trees that were outside when I took a picture of the ball. I'm still going back and forth with my interpretations of the colors at this point, and it looks just like a huge mess, which I kind of like because it also shows that it can come together in the end, even though it looks pretty much like a disaster right now. Oh, here's the indications of those trees. I used a darker blue, still in the turquoise family, still polychromos, and made some indications of branches. Now I'm using some Schpirerr Farben pencils. And laying down some true like glass green. At about this point in the picture, I realized I was using lighter colors than I had to. And I think I was doing that because I was, I guess, a little nervous that the picture was not going to come together like I thought it was going to. So I was, I guess, holding back a bit. Normally I would have probably had more done by now. And I think I would have been a little more bold in my choices, but this just looked so all over the place. So now I started pushing a bit harder. I'm going over that area. That's another window area down there, believe it or not. And I knew if I kept going super light that it was going to take me till tomorrow. So this area that I'm coloring in now is near a lamp. And that little crescent, the sideways crescent, is a lamp that I record right next to every day in my studio. So I started to be a little more bold at this point, and I figured, what's the worst thing that could happen? If it doesn't come out okay, it doesn't come out okay, and yes, I wasted an hour, but I learned so much, even if it didn't come out beautifully. So this little area is the other side of my office. And that would, what I'm coloring right now would be the ceiling of my office. I also realized I probably could have drawn all the areas with a very light green instead of trying to pre-choose the colors, because I think that definitely slowed things down. Yet in the end, I think you'll see that it came out nice. I just don't know if all the fuss in the beginning was necessary. But you know what? I don't know if there's a way to tell. I guess I could do it again and do it with all green and see what the difference would be. I'm coloring right now what would be the panel in between two very large windows in my office. I also realized colored pencils is just all about layering. It's about layering and patience, actually. I don't think there are truly any shortcuts to colored pencils. I haven't found any. If you have any and you would share them with me, I would love that. The black area that I'm coloring right now is my sleeve. And to the left of that, those several lines are my fingers. And I'm actually holding my iPhone, and the reflection of that is depicted in the ball, and that's what I'm coloring now. Oop, now I'm back to the ceiling. And I seem to not have a pattern, but I don't know if it's true. I feel like if I really sat down and looked, there might be a method to my madness, but I'm not quite sure. Okay, now you can see that it's becoming a hand. I wasn't quite sure I was going to put that image of my hand holding the iPhone in there. I wasn't sure that it was going to translate. And then I said, you know what? It's okay if it doesn't. I might as well put it in there. So once again, just putting in more layers. And trying to make the iPhone look like the back of an iPhone. Now I'm going in with a gold Schpirerr Farben pencil because that is a gold ornament topper. It's a really light buttery yellow, and I left the pencil indications a little bit darker than I normally would because I thought they would actually come in handy. There's an element of gray, and there's also a brownish and a goldish in the top. Now something about the ball caught my attention again because I thought I was going to be finishing the top, and all of a sudden I realized it is not done yet. So I went back in. I thought it needed to be more bold. So I chose this green and made almost all the green more intense. I'm using that Eagle turquoise drafting pencil, and I'm adding some shadows. That pencil gives off a minimal amount, but a little tiny bit of sheen when I use it, and it was like the perfect shadow addition for that ball. So I kept using it, and it was going over the top of both of those pencils perfectly. You can sharpen those pencils with one of those rotary sharpeners, and they get super sharp. You know what? I'll link a rotary sharpener for those drafting pencils underneath so you can check it out. I should have put it in the video, but I didn't think to. This way you can look it up. I'm putting some details in the hand. You can actually tell that it's a hand and fingers at this point. And as I was looking at it, I realized it was finally coming together. It didn't look like a bunch of separate pieces. It started to look like a shiny, reflective Christmas ball at this point. It might not be perfect, but I was starting to like the results. I'm trying to make the hand a little clearer. And putting the shadows in the fingers so it actually looks like it's bending around the phone and grasping it. Finally back to the top. So I used that light yellow and then that very gold color. And it was only gold in that one area. Now for the whole picture, I was trying to, because it was in my head, a couple of shades of green and a couple of shades of gold. So I was trying to pick exactly the colors. In any shadowy area or any reflective area. And I thought that would make it easier to interpret what appears to be a green ball and in reality is, I mean, it is green, but oh my gosh, there's so many little details. So on those little pieces up here, I'm using brown because I realized while looking at this ornament that when gold casts a shadow, it's almost like just a darker gold or a brown color. So I did the entire top here with walnut brown, that, what was it? Olive gold or green gold. That mustardy, bright gold color, and that buttery. I didn't really use any black. It's just each of those colors in different areas. The top I left very light because that was the brightest part. That had the most reflection from the window. So I didn't really have to do anything except show a couple of shadows from where the ornament had texture. For the areas that had texture, that were either bubbled up or there was a little depression or bump, I just left that area white. Actually, the depressed areas were usually in a shadow, and I would use the browns. And the elevated areas, I would just leave white, and I wouldn't use any kind of color on them. I sharpened the walnut brown to a very, very sharp point because the wire on the top was so fine. I wanted that to be very nicely detailed. And there was such little details on this. The ornament was so tiny. There was so many little tiny details. I wanted you to be able to see them. You can see here that this area was a little bit more shadowy, so the areas next to the elevated areas were darker. I've talked in other videos about coloring, and a lot of people like to color these days, and a lot of people also say, I don't know why I can't get the results that I want, and I've said before, like my last video, which I'll link below, you have to take your time. And I learned that even more so today, because I thought this was going to be done in a much shorter time period. Oh, you know what? Let me interrupt myself. I used a little bit of green because some of that gold reflected the green from the ornament. So yes, you just have to take your time. And this image reinforced it even more today. And even after I finished this on the video, I went back in and added a little bit more. I'm going over those details in the brown. And then I realized I actually had a gold pencil. And it wasn't quite working. I'm using the bright yellow from the Schpirerr Farbens and going over that area in the lamp and a few more areas. Now there were some reflections that were whiter than were indicated in the picture, so I went over them with the Signo gel pen. Not that many because the reflections were already left white in the picture. A lot of this at the end, or near the end, is me going back in and adding some shadow and some detail. And at one point I also went in with the black to make the shadows more intense. And I also used the white because I thought it even needed to be blended more to make it look more shiny and more smooth. At this point, I'm just drawing a shadow. The window was in front of me, so it was behind the ball. I'm just blending it in. Now you can see in this picture at this point, you can see the lamp, the ceiling, the trees over there by where I'm using the white gel pen. There's a tripod right next to the lamp. My hand is holding the iPhone. There's some odds and ends on the desk. Up here's where I decided I was going to go in again and blend with the white. I'm going over again with that green. At this point, it's just about done. Thank you so much for joining me for this whole adventure in green shiny Christmas balls. I hope you subscribe to me below and hit that little bell button also so you'll be notified for my next videos. And yes, the next one will be a more simple version of this green ball that you can use in coloring books. Once again, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you joined me for these videos, and I will see you soon. Oh, one last thing. At the very end of this, I'm going to add a photo because I did add more detail. I added an indication of my head around the tripod near my hand, and then finally, that's the whole image. So thanks again, subscribe below, and I'll see you soon. Bye.